Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Gladiator 2, in English then, you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Gladiator 2. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I'm also going to give you all the information on which OT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Gladiator 2 is a 2024 epic historical action film directed and produced by Ridley Scott that serves as a sequel to Gladiator 2000. Written by David Scarpa from a story he wrote with Peter Craig, the film was produced by Scott Free Productions and distributed by Paramount Pictures. It stars Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, Fred Hetchinger, Lior Raz, Derek Jacobi, Connie Nielsen, and Denzel Washington. Jacobi and Nielsen reprise their roles from the first film, with Mescal replacing Spencer Treat Clark. Mescal portrays Lucius, whose home is invaded by the Roman army led by General Acacius. He seeks revenge against Acacius and fights as a gladiator for Macrinus, a former slave who plans to overthrow the emperors Geta and Caracalla. A sequel to Gladiator was discussed as early as June 2001, with David Franzoni and John Logan set to return as screenwriters. Over the next few years, Scott offered occasional updates, including the possible involvement of the original film's lead actor, Russell Crowe, along with plot ideas about the Roman afterlife and different historical time periods. Development was halted when DreamWorks sold the rights to the property to Paramount in 2006. The film was finally announced in 2018, and Mescal was cast in the lead role in January 2023, with a script by Scarpa. The rest of the cast signed on over the next several months. Filming took place between June 2023 and January 2024, with a 5-month hiatus due to the 2023 Hollywood labor disputes. Gladiator 2 had its world premiere in Sydney, Australia on October 30, 2024, and was released in the United Kingdom on November 15th and in the United States on November 22nd. It received generally positive reviews from critics and has grossed $221 million. Plot: 16 years after Marcus Aurelius's death, Rome is ruled by the corrupt twin emperors Geta and Caracalla. Aurelius's grandson, Lucius Verus Aurelius, lives under the alias Hanno with his wife Arichat in Numidia. General Acacius's Roman army invades and conquers the city, killing Arichat and enslaving Lucius. To advertise the slaves as potential gladiators, the Romans pit them against feral baboons. Lucius savagely kills a baboon, impressing the stable master Macrinus, who promises Lucius an opportunity to kill Acacius if he wins enough fights in Rome. Acacius returns to Rome as a war hero. Geta and Caracalla arrange gladiatorial games in the Colosseum to celebrate Acacius's victory. Disillusioned with war, Acacius requests a vacation with his wife, Lucilla, but the emperors refuse and plot to conquer Persia and India. Senator Threx throws a party for the emperors and arranges a gladiatorial duel as entertainment. After Lucius wins, Geta asks where he is from. Lucius contemptuously recites Virgil's poetry, revealing his Roman education. Ravi, the gladiator's doctor, treats Lucius's injuries and befriends him. In the Colosseum, Lucius emulates the late legendary gladiator Maximus to win fights. Lucilla recognizes Lucius as her son, whom she sent away from Rome as a child to protect him from assassination by rivals for the throne. During a naval battle in the Colosseum, Lucius leads his side to victory and fires a crossbow at the spectating Acacius, but fails to kill him. After the battle, Lucilla tries to reconnect with her son, but Lucius angrily rebuffs her. He resents being forced to flee Rome while his mother lived in luxury and is upset that her new husband caused Arichat's death. Lucius learns that Ravi was a former slave who won his freedom in the Colosseum. Ravi shows Lucius the gladiator's shrine to Maximus, which preserves Maximus's sword and armor. Lucilla and Acacius conspire with the senators Thrax and Gracchus to overthrow the emperors and restore the Roman Republic. Acacius also agrees to rescue Lucius from slavery. However, Thrax, who owes Macrinus money, tips him off about the coup. To gain imperial favor, Macrinus advises the emperors to arrest Lucilla and Acacius for treason. Macrinus assigns Lucius to kill Acacius in the Colosseum. Lucius fights Acacius, but declines to execute him. The Praetorian Guard execute Acacius at the emperor's command, prompting the people to riot. When Macrinus questions Lucius's refusal to kill Acacius, Lucius argues that Rome can be a better place, but Macrinus disagrees. Macrinus visits Lucilla in her cell and reveals that he was once a slave under the rule of her father, Marcus Aurelius, and will avenge himself on Rome by becoming emperor and ending the imperial dynasty. Macrinus manipulates Caracalla into killing Geta. After Caracalla names his pet monkey as a consul, Macrinus convinces the Senate to overthrow him. He also convinces Caracalla to use Lucilla as bait in the Colosseum, with only Lucius defending her against a horde of enemies. In his plan, Lucius and Lucilla will be slaughtered, triggering another riot, which the Senate will defuse by executing Caracalla. Lucius and Lucilla reconcile to defeat Macrinus. Lucilla informs Lucius that he is Maximus's son and gifts him her father's ring, which also belonged to Maximus and Acacius. Lucius sends Ravi with the ring to meet Acacius' legions outside Rome, requesting military aid. Lucilla is brought into the Colosseum along with the senators with whom she conspired. Armed with Maximus' sword and armor, Lucius rallies the gladiators to revolt against their enslavers and defend Lucilla from execution. Gracchus is killed in the onslaught, while Macrinus kills Caracalla before fatally shooting Lucilla with an arrow. Macrinus flees the rioting city with Lucius in pursuit. Acacius and Macrinus' armies meet outside Rome. To avert a battle, Macrinus and Lucius duel. Although Macrinus nearly kills Lucius in a river, Lucius is inspired by his mother's voice and kills Macrinus. He reveals his true identity as the imperial heir and speaks to both armies, convincing them to build a united and progressive Rome with him. Later, Lucius mourns his parents in the Colosseum. Cast Paul Mescal as Lucius Verus Aurelius, who goes by the alias Hanno, the grandson of the former emperor Marcus Aurelius and son of Maximus Decimus Meridius, the protagonist of Gladiator, 2000. 7. Following his father's death, Lucius was sent away from Rome as a child by his mother, Lucilla, to protect him from assassins. They have not met in around 15 years. Lucius lives with his wife in Numidia, but is taken prisoner by the Roman army after they invade his home and kill his wife. He is sold into slavery to become a gladiator in the Colosseum. He seeks revenge against the Romans and their general, Acacius. Spencer Treat Clark, who played a young Lucius in Gladiator, appears in the film in flashbacks through archive footage. Pedro Pascal as General Acacius, a Roman general who trained under Maximus and Lucilla's husband. Although he lives a luxurious lifestyle in Rome, he spends most of his time away on military campaigns for the emperors. He leads an army to take over North Africa and invades Lucius's home, but is disillusioned by war and does not want to send more men to die for the emperors. Acacius conspires with Lucilla to overthrow the emperors, but is arrested and reduced to fighting as a gladiator in the Colosseum. According to Pascal, he is a very, very good general, which can mean a very good killer, serving as a symbol to Lucius of everything he hates. Connie Nielsen as Lucilla, based on the historical figure Lucilla, Lucius's mother, Maximus's former lover, and Emperor Marcus Aurelius's daughter. She sent Lucius away from Rome after Maximus's death to protect him from rivals for the imperial throne. Following Maximus's death, she marries Acacius. She watches Lucius fight in the Colosseum, but initially does not recognize him as her son. Due to her popularity among the people of Rome, she is feared and exploited by those in power, such as the emperors. Nielsen reprises her role from the original film. Denzel Washington as Macrinus, based on the historical figure Macrinus, a former slave who plans to control Rome. He keeps a stable of gladiators and mentors Lucius. He also works as an arms dealer, providing weapons, food, and oil to the Roman armies in Europe. Director Ridley Scott described him as pretty fucking cruel to the arena fighters, with Washington adding that he wants to be emperor and he's willing to do anything to get there. Scott also noted that Macrinus has a twinkle of bisexuality, describing him as a gangster who started as a prisoner of war, became a gladiator, and earned his freedom. Although Macrinus states his bisexuality in the film, a scene involving Macrinus kissing another man was deleted from the film. Joseph Quinn as Emperor Geta. Based on the historical figure Geta, the co-emperor of Rome alongside his brother Caracalla. Scott described the pair as damaged goods from birth, who are almost a replay of Romulus and Remus, with two other inspirations being Beavis and Butt-Head from the MTV adult cartoon of the same name. Careful not to copy Joaquin Phoenix's performance as Commodus from the original film, Quinn took inspiration from Philip Seymour Hoffman's Owen Davian from Mission Impossible 3, 2006, and Gary Oldman's Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg from The Fifth Element, 1997, for playing his character. One inspiration for Geta's look was John Lydon. Fred Hetchinger as Emperor Caracalla, based on the historical figure Caracalla, the co-emperor of Rome alongside his brother, Geta. He has a pet monkey and is less stable than his brother due to cognitive erosion in his brain. Hetchinger discussed with Scott about finding inspirations to build Caracalla's look from Sid Vicious 18, with Caracalla's pet monkey serving as another inspiration for the character's crazed behavior. Lior Raz as Vigo, the trainer of gladiators for Macrinus. A former gladiator, Vigo is a tough guy who escorts the gladiators to their fights. Sir Derek Jacobi as Senator Gracchus, a member of the Roman Senate who opposes the growing corruption of the imperial court. Jacobi reprises his role from the original film. Peter Mensa as Jugurtha, a Numidian chieftain who mentored Lucius after the latter was exiled from Rome, with whom he is later enslaved and forced to become a gladiator. Matt Lucas as the Master of Ceremonies, the Colosseum's public address announcer. Alexander Karim as Ravi, a former gladiator from India who earned his freedom and then chose to serve as a doctor to wounded combatants. Tim McInerney as Senator Threx, a gambling-addicted, corrupt member of the Roman Senate who owes Macrinus a tremendous amount of money. Rory McCann as Tegula, the leader of the Praetorian Guard. Yuval Gonin as Arashat, Lucius's wife, a skilled archer who is killed during the Roman invasion of their home. Alec Utgoff as Darius, Acacius's second-in-command, whom Acacius recruits to mount a coup against the corrupt emperors. Jan Gehl as Bostar. In addition to Spencer Treat Clark, archival footage is used from the original film of Russell Crowe, Joaquin Phoenix, Thomas Arana, and Jaimon Hounsou as Maximus, Commodus, Quintus, and Juba, respectively. Citation needed. Controversy: Egyptian-Palestinian actress May Kalamawi, who was originally set to play an important character, appears in the film in an uncredited non-speaking background role as Macrinus's companion. Some critics linked her omission to the ongoing war in Gaza and her support for Palestine in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Better source needed. The choice of Denzel Washington sparked criticism in Algeria, where many people denounced a blackwashing of the historical Berber character, arguing that Macrinus was not of sub-Saharan African origin. This historical revisionism erases North African identities to impose a simplistic and incorrect vision of history. By September 2021, Scott stated that the script was once again being worked on, with his intention being to direct the sequel upon the completion of production on Napoleon, 2023. In November, it was revealed that David Scarpa, who worked with Scott on Napoleon, was rewriting the script 46. Scott stated in a 2023 interview that they had struggled for 10 months to write the script 4 years previously, until they revisited the idea of Lucius as the survivor of the original film. According to Scott, the premise for the sequel began with the emperors Caracalla and Geta. He said, "After Commodus's death, there was a scramble for the chair, and out of that eventually came a man who became the father of the two princes. One of them was just this side of being dysfunctional, a lunatic. The other one tried to control his brother." So that state of constant disagreement and fluctuating personalities was where we began. In March 2023, Barry Keoghan entered negotiations to join the cast in the role of Emperor Caracalla, while Denzel Washington joined the cast. Regarding Scott and his brother Tony as great filmmakers who never miss, Washington accepted the role out of interest to work with the inspirational Scott brother again after their previous collaboration in American Gangster, 2007. Additionally, John Mathieson was set to return as cinematographer for the film. Scott didn't conceive Macrinus with Washington in mind, but felt inspired to cast him after seeing Jean-Léon Gérôme's painting Moorish Bath, which depicted a black-bearded man with a jeweled, Dizzy Gillespie-like hat in orange and blue silk, inspiring the character's appearance, plus Washington's status as a method actor. In April 2023, it was announced that Connie Nielsen and Djimon Hounsou would reprise their roles as Lucilla and Juba respectively, while Joseph Quinn was added to the cast as Emperor Gaeta. In May 2023, Pedro Pascal, May Calamawy, Lior Raz, Derek Jacobi, Peter Mensah, and Matt Lucas joined the cast of the film, with Fred Hetchinger entering negotiations to play Caracalla after Keoghan had to drop out over scheduling conflicts with Saltburn 2023. Jacobi reprises his role as Senator Gracchus from the first film. Similarly to Mescal, Pascal underwent intense gladiator training for his role, which he found challenging, but deemed the experience the most exciting of his career due to growing up with Scott's films. In December, Hounsou announced that despite initially being involved, he would not be returning for the sequel due to scheduling conflicts. Production was expected to begin in May 2023, with Ouarzazate, Morocco set as a filming location, 66. Set construction began in the city in April. Filming began in June 2023, with additional filming locations planned for Malta, which stood in for ancient Rome, and the United Kingdom over the following 4 months, with few early sequences being shot at Morocco before flying to Malta to shoot the rest of the film. Mescal felt some nerves over shooting in the assembled Colosseum and shooting scenes with Washington. Scott purposely took Mescal to the Colosseum set so he could familiarize himself with it, as Mescal hadn't done any big studio movies before. An accident involving fire during filming on June 7th injured 6 crew members. Filming was suspended in July due to the 2023 Hollywood labor disputes. For a fight sequence, a rhinoceros was created via 3D printing, controlled by radio remote, but filming the scene took 2 or 3 days, and affected Mescal's physicality due to the temperature. Filming resumed on December 4th in Malta and wrapped on January 17, 2024. Filming also took place on the South Downs at Devil's Dyke, Sussex in June 2024. Funding. In August 2023, the Times of Malta reported that the government of Malta was due to pay 46,653,961 to the subsidiary company of Paramount Studios producing the film, and breaks the record for the biggest state aid to cinema in the EU. Music. Main article Gladiator 2 soundtrack. In January 2024, it was reported that Harry Gregson Williams was composing the score for the film, taking over from Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerrard, who scored the first film. Zimmer decided not to return because he did not want to repeat his work from the first film. In an interview with Curzon, he said that the film was in really good hands with Gregson Williams, who had started his career as Zimmer's assistant. Gregson Williams wrote 100 minutes of original score for the film and used some of Zimmer and Gerrard's musical cues from the first film. Release. Gladiator 2 was released internationally, including the United Kingdom, on November 15, 2024, and later in the United States and Canada on November 22 by Paramount Pictures. Universal Pictures declined to co-finance the sequel or distribute it overseas as it had the first film, leaving only Paramount as the worldwide distributor. In Australia, Italy, and New Zealand, Gladiator 2 was released earlier on November 14th. Following the film's world premiere in Sydney on October 30th, was previously scheduled for a global release on November 22nd. On July 1, 2024, it was announced that the film's release date would be shared with the first of the 2-part film adaptation of the musical Wicked from Universal, whose date was moved from November 27 to avoid competition with Moana 2. This sparked speculation on whether pitting the 2 films together could lead to a scenario similar to the Barbenheimer phenomenon, which was a result of Barbie and Oppenheimer both being released on July 21, 2023. On July 10, 2024, Mescal called the double release "glicked" and voiced his support for the 2 films to be shown as a double feature, saying, "It would be amazing because I think the films couldn't be more polar opposites, and it worked in that context previously. so fingers crossed people come out and see both films on opening weekend. Much like the original film, Gladiator 2 was given a R rating by the Motion Picture Association due to strong bloody violence. Unlike other past films of his, Scott has stated that Gladiator 2 will not receive a director's cut, as he has earned the right to have his final cut and removed some scenes during filming, so he did not need to do so after finishing the film. Marketing footage of the film screened at the CinemaCon 2024 in Las Vegas included scenes of Joseph Quinn as Geta dressed in a white toga and laurel leaf crown, dramatically plunging his thumb downward to note the fate of defeated gladiators, with Nielsen in the background. In June of that year, Scott showcased an extended clip of the film featuring Denzel Washington, Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Connie Nielsen, and Quinn. A poster for the film was released on July 8, 2024, with a trailer released the following day. The trailer would also reportedly be attached to the Marvel Cinematic Universe (MCU) film Deadpool and Wolverine 2024, which was released on July 26, 2024. 90. Jennifer Willett of Ars Technica said the trailer indicated the film promises to be just as much of a visual feast as a new crop of power players, plus a couple of familiar faces, clash over the future of Rome. Rather than using an orchestral score, the first trailer used No Church in the Wild by Jay-Z and Kanye West, which caused a backlash among film fans who said it was too modern of a song choice. Some justified this choice of music by citing the trailer for the first Gladiator, which had used Bawitdaba by Kid Rock, I's father. While a common fan theory since the first film's release, Adam Bentz found it questionable to reveal in a trailer, as it could have been emotionally impactful for audiences like it was for Mescal when he found out his character's relationship with the original's protagonist. On the first day of the 2024 NFL season, Paramount Pictures and Pepsi announced a campaign cross-promoting the film with the soft drink sponsorship of the National Football League. A series of advertisements featured football stars Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, Justin Jefferson, and Travis Kelce as Gridiron Gladiators, with Megan Thee Stallion appearing as Empress Megan. On October 4, 2024, Japanese professional wrestling promotion New Japan Pro Wrestling announced that the movie would sponsor that year's King of Pro Wrestling event on October 14th, which is slated to be the first since 2019. On the 1st of November 2024, at Lucca Comics and Games 2024, to promote the film in Italian cinemas, Francesco Totti played a Roman centurion. On November 11, 2024, Scuderia Ferrari drivers Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz Jr. attended the film's premiere in London as part of a collaboration with Paramount to promote the film, with the film's actors Paul Mescal, Connie Nielsen, and Fred Hetchinger joining the team at the 2024 Las Vegas Grand Prix. The film's logo appeared on Ferrari's car for the Grand Prix itself. Reception. Box office. As of November 22, 2024, Gladiator 2 has grossed $22 million in the United States and Canada and $131 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $153 million. In the United States and Canada, Gladiator 2 is projected to gross around $60 million from 3,500 theaters in its opening weekend. It will compete with Universal's Wicked, in a release that has been compared to 2023's Barbenheimer due to their contrasting target audiences. The film made $22 million on its first day, including $6.5 million from Thursday night previews. The film was released in 63 territories 1 week ahead of its U.S. release and earned $87 million, the biggest opening weekend of Ridley Scott's career. Critical response. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 71% of 283 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6.7/10. The website's consensus reads, echoing its predecessor while upping the blood sport and camp, Gladiator 2 is an action extravaganza that derives much of its strength and honor from Denzel Washington's scene-stealing performance. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 63 out of 100 based on 60 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B on an A+ to F scale, down from the first film's A, while those surveyed by PostTrack gave it a 77% overall positive score, with 64% saying they would definitely recommend it. Rotten Tomatoes reported that critics praised the action, performances, story, and visuals, but some argued that, plot-wise, it's actually too similar to its predecessor. Similarly, Metacritic stated that most critics also feel that the film lives in the shadow of the more emotional and ultimately superior original. Early reactions from the film's first screening at Paramount Studios in Los Angeles on October 18, 2024, were positive. Critics praised Scott's direction, the set pieces, battle sequences, and Mescal's and Washington's performances, mentioning that Scott and Washington could be nominated for the Academy Awards, but a few felt the film lacked an emotional punch when compared to the original film. Film critic Scott Menzel deemed the film Scott's best since The Martian, 2015, a big, bloody, and badass action spectacle that builds upon the original film's legacy. Historical accuracy. The film's historical accuracy was also examined. Some inaccuracies include the siege of the Numidian city by Roman triremes and the presence of sharks in a Naumachia, 110. Numidia had already been part of the Roman Empire for some time during the reign of Caracalla. University of Chicago historian Shadi Barch described the film as total Hollywood bullshit. At the same time, baboons and a rhinoceros showcased on the Colosseum's arena are historically attested, although there is no record of gladiators riding a rhinoceros. Scholar Ray Lawrence noted that the ancient admiration of those who defy death as gladiators is nicely set out by the film, and that the culture of gladiators is well presented with a doctor of gladiators. Prior to the reenacted naval battle within the Colosseum, the announcer claims that the gladiators would be reenacting the Battle of Salamis between the Trojans and the Persians. In reality, the Battle of Salamis was fought in 480 BCE between the Greek city-states and the Persians, with no Trojan involvement. The real-life Macrinus was a Praetorian prefect of Berber descent from North Africa, not sub-Saharan African descent, who became Roman emperor in 217 AD after conspiring against Caracalla and having him murdered. He was not a slave to Marcus Aurelius and never trained gladiators. The emperors Geta and Caracalla were not twins. Lucius Verus was Roman emperor from 161 AD until his death in 169 AD, alongside his adoptive brother Marcus Aurelius, 118. The character of Lucilla is also based on a real historical figure. The real-life Lucilla was the daughter of Marcus Aurelius and the wife of Lucius Verus. One of their sons was named Lucius Verus. There is no historical record of a Roman general named Marcus Acacius. The Roman co-emperors Geta and Caracalla were of mixed descent, mostly Arab, Middle Eastern, and North African, but the actors who played them are not. Both emperors are portrayed as effeminate in the movie. There is no historical evidence to suggest that they were. Wick debuted to $164.2 million at the global box office, a towering figure that includes $50.1 million in overseas ticket sales. Universal's big-budget adaptation of the hit musical was far bigger in North America, with $114 million, ranking as the third biggest domestic debut of the year and the best ever for a Broadway adaptation. Gladiator 2 also jolted the box office with $50.5 million overseas and another $55.5 million domestically. The R-rated sequel to Ridley Scott's 2000 epic Gladiator entered the international box office arena last weekend with $87 million, and it has since generated $165.5 million overseas and $221 million globally. The second Gladiator film, starring Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, and Denzel Washington, carries a massive budget too. It cost more than $250 million to produce and roughly $100 million to promote, so Paramount needs audiences to be entertained throughout Thanksgiving and into the new year. Can a film be too much and not enough at the same time? This is the conundrum of Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2, a movie bursting with just enough spectacle to keep it from being boring, but when you try to get anything out of it thematically, slips through your fingers like the sand in a warrior's hands. It's a film that doesn't so much struggle to escape the shadow of its predecessor as set up camp in it, willing to hit so many of the same beats and concepts that the rhythm becomes numbingly familiar. Bursting through that familiarity is a spectacular performance from Denzel Washington, giving such a consistently engaging turn that he almost throws off the film's balance. You kind of wish the movie was about him instead of its leading man, but that would require a break from the formulaic structure of a hero's journey from slave to leader this film is so content to fulfill. Gladiator 2 opened 16 years after the death of Russell Crowe's Maximus, with an impressively staged battle sequence that establishes a time of great violence and a pair of central characters, the Roman general Marcus Acacius, Pedro Pascal, and a refugee from Rome named Lucius Verus a Cano, Paul Mescal. Acacius leads his soldiers on an assault that results in the death of Lucius's wife, setting him up as the enemy that Lucius will have to topple in the Colosseum. But David Scarpa's script isn't that straightforward. It's revealed quickly that Acacius is married to Lucilla, Connie Nielsen, the partner of Maximus from the first film, and things get really complicated when it's revealed that Lucius is the son that Lucilla sent off to safety years earlier. That's right, it's Maximus 2.0. Before then, Lucius ends up forced to fight for his life against a group of feral baboons, impressing a gladiator handler named Macrinus, Washington. He's taken in by the rage he sees within Lucius, currently aimed at General Acacius. Cut to Rome, where we're introduced to a pair of eccentric emperors named Geta, Joseph Quinn, and Caracalla, Fred Hetchinger. Quinn and Hetchinger go all in on wide-eyed, manic, power-hungry caricatures, which is one of the film's bigger problems. It feels like actors in this film are all in different movies. Washington plays Macrinus as the most politically savvy person in any room he's in. But he's doing Shakespeare while Quinn and Hetchinger are doing, well, Beavis and Butthead. Of course, we're supposed to see Macrinus as smarter and saner than the emperors, but there's a version of Gladiator 2 that doesn't reduce the men most responsible for the bloodshed to such thin characters. More damaging is how often Gladiator 2 seems distracted by its own spectacle. Much as battles in the Colosseum were designed to keep subjugated people from revolting by presenting them with bloodshed as escapism, Gladiator 2 feels obligated to up the ante with its fight scenes, leading to a number of insane set pieces, including the aforementioned cartoon baboons. The CGI here is not great, which is too bad given how good most of the film looks. As a soldier atop a rhino and sharks in the Colosseum. Yes, sharks. Every time that Gladiator 2 feigns interest in something thematically rich regarding power, how it's obtained, and, more so, how it's toppled, the movie spins off in the other direction, almost as if everyone involved is afraid to bite their teeth into anything meaty. And then the film dives so hard into the Lucius-Maximus connection that it starts incorporating footage from the first film. It becomes clear that satisfying fans of that movie is all this one really set out to do. For a lot of people, and sometimes for this person, that's enough. It looks great most of the time, and the sound mix is fantastic. Scott doesn't falter in these departments. As for performance, people have come down on Mescal for not being as captivating as Crowe, and he's not, but I think that's more because of a script that's too content to make him a carbon copy instead of his own man. Pascal fares better despite less screen time than the setup promises. Still, he is the only performer outside of Washington who one can see make choices that other actors might not have considered, especially when his position as a military leader becomes challenged by everything collapsing around him. Again, it's Washington's movie through and through, as the Oscar winner adds another feather to his cap as a man who knows how to position himself to take power in the middle of a revolution, but never really considers the cost of those machinations. Imagine a Gladiator 2 from his perspective, and you can see the more ambitious version of this sequel that could have happened, if only the filmmakers were willing to think outside the Colosseum. One of the most infamous unproduced screenplays of all time was Nick Cave's Gladiator 2, a project developed under the title Christ Killer, wherein Crowe would return as a Maximus who has to battle his way out of purgatory and is forced to live for generations, battling in some form through the wars of the 20th century all the way to present day. It sounds insane. Of course, it was shut down, but I couldn't help thinking while watching this Gladiator 2 that there had to be some middle ground between that kind of grandiose, sharp right turn from the original to one that's so content to stay in the same lane. Yes, I am entertained, but is that all you got? Without giving away too much of the plot of Ridley Scott's new epic Gladiator 2, the sequel to the beloved first installment that made Russell Crowe an icon back in the year 2000, one long action sequence does indeed revolve around flooding the Colosseum. Long shots focus on those unfortunates who end up in the water, only to be torn into chunks by aquatic predators, much to the delight of the bloodthirsty crowd. It's not subtle or historically accurate in the pure sense, and it's not meant to be. With that said, it is pretty cool, especially on an IMAX screen. Over its centuries of use as a venue for some of the most extreme violence ever dreamt by humanity, the Colosseum never, so far as we know, played host to sharks. The Romans did actually flood the Colosseum to host a miniature naval battle. Elephants, rhinoceroses, lions, tigers, bears, wolves, Christians, condemned criminals, and of course gladiators all bled and died for the enjoyment of the crowd. No sharks, though. Still, it doesn't really matter. Just like it doesn't matter that the Romans did not have newspapers or cafes, because Gladiator 2, like most of Ridley Scott's epic historical films, isn't trying to be a faithful recreation of the era, in this case of Rome at the end of the 2nd century AD. To judge his movies by that standard is to fundamentally miss what Scott is trying to accomplish. The kind of movie he imagines for years or decades, spends immense amounts of money to produce, and then directs. He makes epics with messages so straightforward that they're impossible to miss. Masculine strength is generally good, intolerance of all kinds is bad, and so on, and fills them with some of the most incredible action sequences ever put on screen. The historical setting is more backdrop than something baked into the DNA of the project. Ridley Scott, as he will happily tell you, isn't a historian. "Get a life," he said, when confronted by professional critiques of his preceding effort, the rather maligned Napoleon 2023. It doesn't help that when he does make a movie that captures true events and period-accurate attitudes correctly, as he did in 2021's The Last Duel, very few people bothered to watch. The first Gladiator, despite its sumptuous setting and beloved reputation, had almost nothing to do with Rome, as it actually existed in the time of Marcus Aurelius and his villainous son Commodus. It was a sword-and-sandals costume epic, one that dressed up a fantastical plot and modern values in ancient trappings. The film invented characters who never existed, including Russell Crowe's general-turned-gladiator, Maximus. The real-life Commodus wasn't a good guy, but he didn't murder his father or die in the Colosseum. His personal trainer, a wrestler named Narcissus, strangled him in his bedchamber 15 years into his reign. We could go on, but the gist is that the movie offers a purely invented story of the events surrounding and following the death of Marcus Aurelius. On a more basic level, Gladiator's values were fundamentally contemporary. It had a great deal to say about freedom, but its freedom was of a distinctly late 20th century vintage. There's nothing to suggest that the historical Marcus Aurelius had any interest in returning Rome to a republican form of government, as the character in the movie did, or that such an effort would have had any support among the empire's elite or its populace. Using the Senate as a stand-in for the Roman people, as the story does in Gladiator, distorts the nature of the institution past the point of recognition. Its members in any period, republican or imperial, were blue-blooded oligarchs in the purest sense, not representatives of the popular will. As compelling as Gladiator was and remains, it was compelling as a movie, not because of what it had to say about ancient Rome. Rome was a dream. A good dream, Scott's characters said over and over, and if only they could strip away the corruption and tyrannical leeches, it would be good once more. As for the value of Marcus Aurelius's dream of Rome, one character, Denzel Washington's deliciously villainous Macrinus, openly mocks the concept. Rome is blood and power, nothing more. The city's streets are filled with impoverished people, while its highest elite, made up of unworthy dilettantes, party boys, and gamblers, forces gladiators to fight to the death at an impossibly lavish dinner party. The pro-Roman argument comes into play via a former gladiator-turned-doctor, Ravi, played by Alexander Karim, from somewhere in the distant East, who was enslaved but won his freedom in the arena and married a woman from Britain. Only in Rome, the former slave says, could he have built that life. That's not an abstract concept of political freedom. It's the very stuff of life, albeit at the cost of everything that former Gladiator's life could have been had he never been enslaved. Even at the end, after the bad guys are vanquished, we're left to ask, who was right? That is a far richer, animating concept than one that sees the glory and righteousness of Rome as givens, as in the original Gladiator. The tension between ideology and reality, the fictions that make it possible for spectators to go to a gigantic coliseum and watch people and animals tear one another apart for their entertainment, runs through the entire movie. The first Gladiator recognized the power of the Roman mob, even as it saw their taste for blood as an exotic facet of a past time. The second asks why that thirst for violence as spectacle existed, and for whose benefit. It's not trying to. Judging it according to that standard, or one in which a pedantic version of historical accuracy takes precedence over the essence of a time and place, misses the point. Gladiator 2 captures the vibes of ancient Rome quite well. It asks intriguing questions about power and its costs, and the legacies we inherit from the past that force us to deal with the brutal reality of the Roman Empire as it actually functioned. That is a far more valuable contribution than getting sequences of events nearly 2,000 years ago precisely correct. When TikTok and Instagram turn men thinking about the Roman Empire into a meme, the historian's job isn't to list off the names of consuls and emperors or the years in which battles took place. It's to use that as a chance to see Rome as a mirror for the present. People who lived long ago operated according to principles that were not our own. But the choices they made and the worlds they built show us something essential about what humanity can be. If we don't engage thoughtfully with them, we're doing them and us a disservice. Whatever its flaws as a film or as a description of the past, Gladiator 2 accomplishes that task. If you're paying attention despite the copious gore, Denzel Washington having the time of his life as a scenery-chewing villain, and of course the sharks, you'll leave the movie with a far deeper grasp of Rome as it actually was. People really did live and die on the sands of the Colosseum. Some benefited from that, others suffered. While some will surely hate it for this, Gladiator 2 is surprisingly ambivalent about the Roman Empire. So are most of the people who spend their lives researching and writing about Rome. That's not because they or the movie lack a perspective, but because knowing Rome, really knowing it, requires us to grapple with both spilt blood and gorgeous marble. Two of the most anticipated tentpoles this year missed their projections, but are still rich enough to make exhibition happy in what's driving an overall estimated $205 million weekend. Intelligence says that a combined 12 million people went to see Wicked and Gladiator 2, representing 81% of the weekend's foot traffic. As far as the lower ticket sales for Wicked and Gladiator 2, both have runtimes at 2.5 hour plus. When a studio releases a movie of that length during the holiday spread of November and December, people generally want to plan their trip to the cinema and get the best seats. As far as Wicked coming in under $130 million and hopefully nothing less, that boils down to the industry's forecasting error on female-driven titles. With pre-sales so massive on Wicked at $30 million, it's not an exact science determining if they're all showing up on day one. When it comes to Gladiator 2, it's not a fanboy movie. Only 14% men under 25 went, compared to 46% men over 25 and 33% women over 25. On behalf of the people who operate movie theaters around the world, congratulations to our studio partners and the creative community for one of the most successful November weekends ever at the box office, exclaimed National Association of Theater Owners President and CEO Michael O'Leary about the weekend. Once again, it's clear that when healthy competition meets premium experiences, the marketplace thrives and consumers win. The success of movies like Wicked and Gladiator 2, not to mention hearty pre-sales already for Moana 2, demonstrates just how much movie fans of all ages enjoy going to the movies. Nothing tops the cinematic experience, and audiences are loving it. This is a tremendous catalyst for a strong box office going into December and the new year. Glicked will deliver the second highest November weekend for the post-pandemic box office at Regal, only bested by the opening of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever in 2022, added John Curry, SVP of Commercial at Regal. exclaimed Universal Domestic Distribution head Jim Orr. Wicked is a spectacular cinematic event as audiences embraced John M. Chu's incredible take on the film that generations of fans around the world have been waiting for. The production of this beloved property is something that must be experienced on the biggest screen, as the mesmerizing performances of Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande emotionally catapult audiences to Oz. Other stats. Post-track shows that, in regards to ratio, not admissions, while Wicked had the higher pre-sales over Gladiator 2, 63% bought their tickets more than a week in advance for the musical versus 45% for the Sword and Sandal sequel. It was the Washington movie which saw more walk-up business than the musical, 55% to 37%. That's simply because female moviegoers pre-plan their trips to the box office. Per Intelligence, Wicked was the bigger with matinees than Gladiator 2, 64% to 55% in foot traffic before 5 p.m. showtimes. Both had similar average theater prices for general audiences, Wicked $14.36 to Gladiator $14.32. However, the latter was more expensive in PLF screens, $18.33 to 72 cents. Wicked's top-grossing cities through yesterday were NYC, $6.3 million, Chicago, $2.5 million, Philly, $2.2 million, San Francisco, $2.2 million, Dallas, $2.2 million, DC, $2 million, Salt Lake City, $1.8 million, and Atlanta, $1.7 million. AMC Lincoln Square in NYC is Wicked's top-grossing theater at $268K to date. That's Gladiator 2's to grossing venue 2 with $130K. Gladiator 2 saw 10% of its gross coming from Canada off 8% of its overall location count. The major markets that overperformed were LA, NYC, San Francisco, DC, Toronto, Miami, San Diego, Montreal, and Vancouver, while the only major market that under-indexed was Orlando. Top theaters came from NYC, LA, Toronto, Houston, Montreal, San Antonio, San Francisco, Atlanta, DC, Dallas, and Seattle. Very similar large-format draws for Wicked and Gladiator 2, both around 32%. Paramount's Gladiator 2 did $12.4 million global weekend in IMAX, $9.4 of that in US, Canada, or 17% of the weekend. Running cume worldwide on the film for IMAX is $21.4 million. Wicked did $6.8 million global in IMAX with $4.1 million from a limited release stateside. Social media stats on Wicked counted 964.3 men's before release across TikTok, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram combined, 64% above the family live-action feature average. Wicked clocked 40.1 mem video views in the 24 hours after the Super Bowl, in the teaser spot that ran in the first quarter and was third behind Deadpool and Wolverine, 1.1 BSMU $211, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, 310.58 menglers. The viral rate for Wicked videos was a very good 14-1. The Wicked cast is complexly social and fully activated with social megastar Grande at 466.7 million, Jeff Goldblum at 4.2, Michelle Yeoh at 3.1 m, Erivo at 1.9 Yang at 788K, with 480.7 million total fans across all 5 major social platforms. Gladiator 2's social media reach at 336.8 mem per relish mix is 32% below action-adventure picks across 5 platforms. Pedro Pascal is the social media leader at 8.5 mem, while Joseph Quinn is near 6 m, while Paul Mescal is below 1 m, and Washington is off the grid. All eyes are on Wicked's staying power as Moana 2 moves in. Can 2 female heavy tentpoles stay alive? The marketplace arguably hasn't seen a face-off like this ever. Can it cross over on word of mouth? Are fans going a second or third time? Universal's Wicked is singing at the global box office, with an estimated $164.2 million debut. That's only slightly off from where it was projected to land through Sunday, as we noted yesterday, see below. The split on the John M. Chu-directed first installment of this Broadway musical adaptation is $114 million domestic and $50.2 million from the international box office. Meanwhile, and before we dig further into Elphaba and Glinda's opening numbers, Paramount's Gladiator 2 has rumbled past the 2-century mark globally, now with $221 worldwide. This includes 2 weekends of overseas play and the first domestic frame. The Ridley Scott-directed sequel launched early in offshore markets. The North America launch was $55.5 million, while the sophomore overseas frame added $50.5 million, 2%. For an offshore running cume of $165.5, whichever way we slice it, it's good news all around with robust play for both movies and more. Taking a closer look at Wicked globally, the film enjoyed the biggest opening weekend for a Broadway adaptation ahead of Les Miserables, $103 million, the sixth biggest opening weekend of 2024, the best for a non-sequel this year, and the fifth biggest launch weekend ever for a musical ahead of 2023's The Little Mermaid, $163.6 million, and behind only 2019's The Lion King, $446 million, 2017's Beauty and the Beast, $358, Frozen 2, $358, and 2019's Aladdin, $213. Internationally, the Cynthia Erivo-Ariana Grande star had the top start for a Broadway adaptation in like-for-like markets ahead of Les Miserables, and the sixth biggest opening weekend ever for a musical. In 46 of the 61 debut markets, this is Universal's best live-action start of 2024, including previews. It is also Chu's best start in 34, excluding previews. And the best ever for a stage musical adaptation in 42, including previews. Word of mouth is very strong across the board, with Universal creating a new cultural moment from a brand that doesn't come with built-in awareness across the globe. Leading all play, the UK and Ireland came in higher than projected at a clear number one with $17.6 million above Wonka plus 51%, Mamma Mia 2 plus 38%, The Jungle Book 36%, Les Miserables plus 65%, and more than double Frozen, Aladdin, and The Little Mermaid. This reps the top UK start for Universal in 2024 and the studio's biggest three-day launch since No Time to Die. It's also estimated as the biggest three-day debut of the year and, by far, the biggest stage musical opening ever. Friday in the UK/Ireland was the second biggest opening Friday of the year, behind Deadpool and Wolverine. Universal's fifth biggest opening Friday of all time, the eighth biggest November opening ever, and came in higher than Avatar: The Way of Water to achieve the eighth biggest opening Friday since 2020. Saturday then saw the best numbers of the year, higher than Inside Out 2, and the fifth biggest Saturday in the market since 2020. This was also Universal's fourth biggest opening Saturday of all time, the third biggest November Saturday result ever, and the third biggest opening Saturday for any musical film in the market, only behind Beauty and the Beast and Frozen 2. Advanced ticket sales soared across the market, with the top site the Odeon Luxe Leicester Square, which achieved its highest opening Friday since Oppenheimer. Wicked also delivered the highest-grossing opening Friday in IMAX for a PG film, above The Jungle Book, and overtook Beauty and the Beast's opening Friday for the biggest opening for any musical in the format. At $6.7 million including previews, Australia opened at number 1 on 327 screens with a 59% share of the top 10 titles. Wednesday night previews more than doubled Gladiator 2's same-day previews last week, performing in line with Top Gun: Maverick and The Batman, and beating same-day previews for The Greatest Showman, Moana, and Mary Poppins Returns. Wicked's Oz opening is well above key comps including Wonka, Frozen, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, The Jungle Book, and Mamma Mia 2, and is Universal's top start of the year. Korea gave Wicked a number one $4.7 million bow, with 47% share and strong audience scores. The opening is above Gladiator 2's launch last week, as well as The Little Mermaid, and more than 3x Barbie, while in line with Mamma Mia 2 and Bohemian Rhapsody. Wicked marked Uni's biggest Korea start of 2024, excluding previews, and the second best for a stage musical adaptation ever, behind Les Miserables. In Mexico, Wicked opened to $4 million, surpassing the total lifetimes of Les Miserables, Mamma Mia 2, and Mary Poppins Returns. The weekend result is above Frozen, almost double The Greatest Showman, and more than 4x La La Land, excluding previews, for Universal's biggest live-action opening of 2024, Chu's biggest opening in the market, and the biggest opening ever for a stage musical adaptation. On Thursday, Wicked delivered the biggest ever opening day for a stage musical adaptation and Universal's biggest live-action opening of the year, while Wednesday evening previews outgrossed titles with the same preview strategy, including Wonka, the latest Hunger Games, and Mission Impossible 7, beating the full opening days of Les Miserables, plus 89%, and Mamma Mia 2, plus 17%. The stage musical played in the market from 2013 to 15, 415 shows. Rounding out the top 5 markets, Brazil opened with $1.8 million across 1,416 screens, in line with Frozen, and more than double Mamma Mia 2, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Greatest Showman, and Les Miserables. This is Universal's biggest live-action opening of 2024, Chu's biggest opening ever, and the best for a stage musical adaptation. Also notable, the Philippines achieved Universal's biggest Saturday since the start of the pandemic, ahead of Jurassic World Dominion, and is on track for a $1.7 million weekend, in line with Barbie, -4%, and surpassing the total lifetimes of key comps including Les Miserables, Mamma Mia 2, Wonka, and La La Land. States Spain 1.7, Italy 1.5 million, Indonesia 1.1 mega, New Zealand 800 round out the top 10. Still to come are France, December 4, China, December 6, Germany, December 12, and Japan, March 7, 2025. Returning to Gladiator 2, the holdover drop was a strong 42%, with the UK leading the 64 markets now in play. The gross there is $23.1 million after 2 frames. G2 is still number 1 in France, now with $17.7 million after just a 39% dip, followed by Spain, $11.9 Mescal, and Australia, $8.9. China was new this session, taking in $3 million. Local titles took the top 3 spots in the market. The overseas IMAX total on G2 is $12 million for $21.4 million global. IMAX CEO Rich Gelfond beamed, Gladiator 2 and Wicked delivered one of the best 1-2 punches at the global box office that IMAX has ever had. With the long Thanksgiving holiday weekend and Moana 2 yet ahead, moviegoing is surging at the right time as the year draws to a close and a phenomenal 2025 slate arrives. Crossing $100 million worldwide earlier this week, Amazon MGM Studios' Red One, which Warner Bros. Is releasing internationally, added $8.7 million from 75 overseas markets. The offshore cum is now $64.2 million for $117.1 million global. Tops to date are the UK, $7.5 million, Mexico, $6.2 million, Germany, Australia, $3.3 million, and Spain, $3.2 million. Sony's Venom: The Last Dance added another $7.8 from 66 markets for a $322.6 million international cum and $456.4 million global. Russell Crowe doesn't return to the Coliseum in the long-anticipated sequel to Gladiator, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. As legendary filmmaker Ridley Scott tells People, the New Zealand star, who won the Best Actor Oscar in 2001 for his performance in the first film, was eager to somehow factor into Gladiator 2, despite his character Maximus's death at the end of the original. Russell and I had a go at it around 18 years ago, Scott, 86, recalls. I had Nick Cave writing the script, and I kept saying to Russell, "But you're dead." And he said, "I know I'm dead, and I want to come back from the dead." In Gladiator, Crowe's Maximus, a former Roman general forced to fight for his life in the Colosseum, dies from wounds sustained after killing Roman Emperor Commodus Joaquin Phoenix. The new film centers on Lucius, Paul Mescal, the son of Maximus, who is also enslaved into becoming a gladiator. Lucius, as a child in the first film, was played by Spencer Treat Clark. Ridley Scott clarifies Denzel Washington acted same-sex kiss in Gladiator 2, but it ultimately didn't happen. Scott says he tried to devise a way to include Maximus in the sequel via a portal to bring him back from the dead. The only way of doing it was to go to another battle, and through a dying warrior, he comes back into the spirit of the warrior, remembers Scott. So that's his portal. When presented with the concept, Scott says Crowe rebuffed it because it would require casting a different actor in the reincarnated role. He said, "So that's no fin good, is it?" Scott recalls Crowe saying, "It didn't really work." The actor also said on a podcast that it was slightly uncomfortable for him since his character is dead and I have no say in what gets done in future storylines. "Can't say anything. It's not my place. I'm 6 foot under," he said at the time. 2 original cast members do reprise their roles, Connie Nielsen and Derek Jacobi. New cast members range from Denzel Washington to Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn. Mescal, 28, has been open about not feeling compelled to reach out to Crowe before leading the new Gladiator movie. Ultimately, I have to stand behind this entirely by myself. You can't rely on anyone besides the script and the director and yourself, he told Extra. On Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Jess Bush plays Nurse Chapel. Here on 21st Century Earth, though, the 32-year-old Australian moonlights as an artist, known as Onjessa, and her latest exhibit is creating quite the buzz in New York. Bush has entombed 1,000 dead bees in orbs of resin and strung them together in a floating sculpture hanging in the glass atrium lobby of Manhattan West, the new development on 9th Avenue and 32nd Street. The inspiration was my own sense of wonder and gratitude for Earth's beauty, she says. As for where she got her hands on 1,000 dead bees, unfortunately, it wasn't that hard. I have a few beekeepers in Australia that I visit, and I pick up dead bees from the grass around the hive. THR got an early look at the exhibit, which opened to the public October 30th, and can report that it's definitely a honey ant. The Gladiator doctor named Ravi in Gladiator 2 is based on some real-life historical figures and knowledge. Following the highly anticipated release of Gladiator 2 on November 22, 2024, the epic blockbuster sequel has received mostly positive reviews and a certified fresh Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 71%. Paul Mescal leads the cast of Gladiator 2 alongside Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, and Connie Nielsen, who reprises her role as Lucilla, the mother of Mescal's Lucius. Gladiator 2's box office earned an impressive $55 million in its opening weekend, setting it up to become one of Ridley Scott's highest-grossing films. One of the most significant supporting characters in Gladiator 2 is the gladiator medic, Ravi. Portrayed by Alexander Karim, the dog, the Wheel of Time, Ravi encounters Lucius after the gladiator enters Rome to battle in the Colosseum. As one of the most excitable gladiators in all of Rome, Lucius acquires some serious injuries after defying the odds time and time again. Because of how frequently he gets wounded during the battles, but comes away with his life, Lucius becomes good buddies with Ravi, who stitches him up and tends to several other injuries Lucius sustains throughout the film. Gladiator 2 is now playing in theaters. Gladiator doctors like Ravi in Gladiator 2 were not uncommon in ancient Rome. Claudius Galen is probably the most famous example of an ancient physician who provided medical aid to gladiators during his life. Galen was a physician and philosopher who became the definitive voice of modern medicine and one of the Roman Empire's greatest medical influences. According to BBC, Galen studied in Greece, in Alexandria, and other parts of Asia Minor, and returned home to become chief physician to the Gladiator School in Pergamum, gaining much experience of treating wounds. Galen's prominence likely inspired and educated other gladiator doctors. While Ravi is a fictional character in Gladiator 2 and is not based on Galen, any particular gladiator physician, his role is accurate to the history of the Roman Empire. Galen was not a former gladiator himself like Ravi and was a member of high society who acquired his education classically. Ravi, on the other hand, was a gladiator who seemingly bought his freedom by becoming of use as a self-trained physician. Lucius notes in Gladiator 2 that Ravi has a heavy hand when he stitches up a wound on his arm. Ravi informs him that he was once in the same position as Lucius and worked his way out of the arena. Ravi's unusual road from being a gladiator to a physician was invented for the film. The fact that he was a former gladiator was an effective narrative device that helped his character connect with Lucius in a way that only they and other gladiators could really understand. Lucius had no respect for Rome and wished to see it crumble. Any high society doctor, such as Galen, would likely have been turned away by the resilient yet stubborn Lucius, which is likely why screenwriter David Scarpa chose to create a commonality between Ravi and Lucius instead. That's also the point of this film. The film is the sequel to 2000's Best Picture, Gladiator. Both films are directed by Ridley Scott. The original gladiator with a heart of gold was Maximus, a farmer pressed into service and a soldier who believed himself apolitical, Russell Crowe. In service to the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, Richard Harris, he saw the shady succession of Commodus, Joaquin Phoenix, the unstable heir apparent. In a series of blood in the sandal battles, Maximus became more popular. It's all about popular, as Glinda says in this weekend's other big release, than the Emperor, and finally manages to kill the laurel-wreathed villain. There are no masters and virtually no gods in this version of Rome. The pagan city of both the original and the sequel is oddly empty of temples. Gladiator 2 opens with a Roman naval legion laying siege to the city of Numidia, a northern African port town where our hero and his soon-to-be-fridged wife live. She dies gloriously in battle. He lives to take revenge. Small gestures are made in offering to gods never named, just as Commodus remarked offhand in the first film that he will sacrifice 100 bulls to celebrate a military victory. To whom the sacrifice will be addressed, we never know. In what temple these people worship their blessed mother or blessed father, we are never shown. Perhaps Scott doesn't believe an American audience can root for a truly pagan protagonist, even in pre-Christian Rome. In the 2024 film, Rome is subject to the misrule of a pair of twin emperors, Geta and Caracalla, Joseph Quinn and Fred Heckinger respectively. These evil red-headed twinks behave like Caligula and look like inbreeding, which raises the question, whose kids are these? Commodus died without heir, his sister Lucilla, Connie Nielsen, hid her son Lucius to protect him from the chaos, and Marcus Aurelius's line has apparently ended. These purebreds without papers are cut out of the same mold as all knavish and obviously bad rulers in film, hilariously decadent, foppish, and dandy, screaming "let them eat cake" while petting their monkey, who is also a senator. Formidable enemies, they ain't. Luckily, Denzel Washington is on the scene as Macrinus, a former slave and gladiator turned profiteer. The brightest spot of the film, Washington plays his character with layered subtlety, eschewing the simply ambitious or the purely vengeful, instead reaching for the rage of a class-locked citizen seeking to change his stars by any means necessary. Having bought Hano, Mescal, and turned him into an arena star, Macrinus believes he can ride the wave all the way to the throne. Glowering on the margins of all this is a criminally underutilized Pedro Pascal as General Acacius. Having been the one to kill Hano's wife, he is introduced first as villain. Later, as we discover him to be Lucilla's lover, he becomes a more complex figure and perhaps a sympathetic one. But none of these things comes to fruition as the film careens toward its implacable spectacles: a naval battle in the flooded Colosseum, a chest full of arrows for our beautiful boy, and a shameless set of flashbacks to the first film to establish what must by now be obvious to anyone paying attention: Hano is not who he seems to be. No character in the film moves on to these next lines of Virgil, but they're present in the mind of anyone who's read the poem. Great Jupiter might be a bridge too far for a film where the deeply religious people of Rome refer only vaguely to the gods when they wish to invoke authority or inexorability. Yet the hands of Jupiter are all over their destinies, and shining worth is definitely an inherited trait. Spoiler warning follows. Hano is, of course, the long-lost Lucius, the only true heir to the throne and secretly sired by Maximus. In Paul Mescal and in a contour palette, the casting gods have found a physiognomy that suggests patrimony from both Crow and Harris, an uncanny resemblance pointed out and mimicked and underlined and reinforced and outlined in neon and screamed at the audience about 100 times in the film's 148-minute run. We get it. Bloodlines are everything, somehow Palpatine returned. Lucius has inherited his father's ability to command an army, though he was only a soldier out of necessity. He's inherited his grandfather's stoicism and affection for the Senate. He's inherited both of their abilities to make people love him effortlessly, to the point where they chant his name above the arena, despite the fact that he's presented as one of a number of barbarians and no one has told them what his name is. They must do this because they did it for Maximus, and we must recreate the film that came before. The Romans must also recreate the Rome that came before. Nearly everyone in this film is obsessed with the Rome that was, the Rome where honor meant something, where the emperor was a scholar instead of a syphilitic club kid in a toga, where the people didn't go hungry in favor of funding wars, and where the Praetorian Guard wasn't holding down the rabble with open brutality at all times. They want to make Rome a republic or make her great again, or make her into a socialist paradise. It's really not clear. It is much easier to complain about a bad government than to build one that works. See Virgil for more on this. See Hannah Arendt. See Maria Gimbutas. See all of human history. See the news. There is no other Rome, says Macrinus, this film's closest thing to a voice of reason. He's not a Republican, and he knows that Rome will not become a merry and peaceful democracy in the 200th year of the Common Era. He alone seems to understand that the chaos at the heart of this empire is the rule, not the exception, and that these events fall perfectly into the jagged line of Roman history. Even Lucius, who seeks to free the city and not to rule it, is much too optimistic about what's to come. "The slave dreams not of freedom," says Macrinus, quoting Cicero. "The slave dreams of a slave to call his own." Gladiator was a famously ahistorical film, playing fast and loose with names and dates, and even the uniforms the legions wore in battle. Though Gladiator 2 is just as detached from the real history that it loots at will, it seizes, at length and only by accident, on a great truth about the Roman Empire and all empires. Chaos, destruction, and rule by the worst impulses known to mankind are not aberrations. They are our default state. Fascism and kakistocracy are not disasters that come from nowhere. They're the result of those default conditions. But to return and view the cheerful skies, the good days, the Pax Romana, the fully automated gay luxury space communism of our dreams is the result of boring and difficult work in creating an equitable and beautiful world that rewards merit and punishes, or at least silences, the cruel and inhumane among us. Gladiator 2 posits that a better world is possible and worth fighting for. It points out how important Nippo babies like Scott's 3 children, all film directors, will be to that world. It shows us a jaggedly broken and bloody window through which we can see that world for a second as the train of history runs us over, taking us into the dark tunnel of war and empire on the tracks that will eventually lead us home. Gladiator 2. The long-rumored sequel to his 2000 Oscar-winning epic, Gladiator. I'm a massive fan of the Russell Crowe-led original and wasn't convinced we needed a sequel to such a brilliant all-timer. But Scott has been working on a second film since 2001, parsing through ideas, shaping and reshaping scripts, and getting the right people on board. That brings us to Gladiator 2, Ridley Scott's return to the Roman Empire, although without the rugged star power of Russell Crowe. But stepping into his sandals is rising star Paul Mescal, who pours every ounce of himself into the role of Lucius Verus. Fans of the first film might recognize that name, as he was the young grandson of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, originally played by Spencer Treat Clark. Lucius' story is the centerpiece of this spectacular sequel that delivers everything you want from a big-budget blockbuster. This time around, the screenplay is handled by David Scarpa, who just recently worked with Scott on Napoleon. Scarpa dusts off several story threads from the 2000 film and reuses them with mostly new characters. But this isn't some lazy rehash of its predecessor. Scott and Scarpa add several new threads of their own, often braiding them with the old to make something fresh. It results in a film that proudly honors the original while creating an identity very much its own. Gladiator 2 opens with one of the most exhilarating battle sequences Ridley Scott has ever put to screen. In 200 AD, under the leadership of General Marcus Acacius, Pedro Pascal, the Roman army invades Numidia, the last free city in Africa Nova. Helping defend the city is Lucius, who has been living under the alias Hanno. During the brutal and bloody battle, Lucius's wife Arishat Euvelgonen is killed and he is enslaved. Lucius is taken to the outskirts of Rome, where he and other captives are thrown into an arena to fight feral baboons in front of potential buyers. Lucius impresses Macrinus, Denzel Washington, who buys him to add to his stable of gladiators. Macrinus is a mysterious but clearly ambitious man who sees the rage in Lucius as a means to fulfill his bigger plans. As he does with every film he's in, the charismatic Washington makes Gladiator 2 better. He has the time of his life playing Macrinus, a shrewd and politically savvy manipulator who has his eyes focused on one thing: unbridled power. Meanwhile, General Acacius returns to Rome, where he is greeted by the depraved and corrupt twin emperors, Geta, Joseph Quinn, and Caracalla, Fred Hetchinger, who immediately plan games in the Colosseum to celebrate Rome's victories. But secretly, the war-weary Acacius has grown disillusioned with the direction of Rome under the two emperors. So much so that he and his wife Lucilla, a returning Connie Nielsen, are secretly organizing an insurrection with 5,000 soldiers loyal to Acacius making their way towards Rome. As the city gathers for the upcoming Gladiator games, the Machiavellian Macrinus seizes his opportunity to get closer to the throne. He convinces a reluctant Lucius to fight as his gladiator, promising him an opportunity for vengeance against Acacius if he wins enough fights in the Colosseum. And much like Crowe's Maximus in the first film, Lucius will need to earn the trust of his fellow gladiators and win the Roman crowd if he is ever to have his chance at revenge. Scarpa's script is loaded with political intrigue and family revelations, but it's the blood and brawn of the Colosseum that will draw the most excitement. The action scenes are electric, combining intense choreography with brute spectacle. They're wild, brutal, and extravagantly staged. Just as impressive are the magnificent costumes and the stunning production design, both of which benefit greatly from the film's hefty budget. A shaky digital effect or two aside, the film is a dazzling visual achievement. For some, comparing Gladiator 2 with its superior predecessor will be immediately yet fruitlessly tempting. The sequel may not reach the same heights or have the same impact, but it's a worthy successor in nearly every regard. Rome lives and breathes through Scott's bravura filmmaking and Scarpa's incisive script, both of whom create a colossal empire on the brink. And while there's no shortage of juicy melodrama, underneath it simmers strong statements on power and oppression. Throw in a fiery Paul Mescal and a Denzel Washington performance for the ages, and you have the most entertaining big-screen blockbuster of the year. With a combined $270 million in worldwide ticket sales, Wicked and Gladiator 2 breathed fresh life into a box office that has struggled lately, leading to one of the busiest movie-going weekends of the year. John M. Chu's lavish big-budget musical Wicked, starring Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, debuted with $114 million domestically and $164.2 million globally for Universal Pictures, according to studio estimates Sunday. That made it the third biggest opening weekend of the year, behind only Deadpool and Wolverine and Inside Out 2. It's also a record for a Broadway musical adaptation. Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2, a sequel to his 2000 Best Picture-winning original, launched with $55.5 million in ticket sales. With a price tag of around $250 million to produce it, Gladiator 2 was a big bet by Paramount Pictures to return to the Coliseum with a largely new cast, led by Denzel Washington and Paul Mescal. While it opened with a touch less than the $60 million predicted in domestic ticket sales, Gladiator 2 has performed well overseas. It added $50.5 million internationally. The collision of the two movies led to some echoes of the Barbenheimer effect of last year, when Barbie and Oppenheimer launched simultaneously. The nickname this time, Glicked, wasn't quite as catchy, and the cultural imprint was also notably less. Few people sought out a double feature this time. The domestic grosses in 2023, $162 million for Barbie and $82 million for Oppenheimer, were also higher. For Universal, which distributed Oppenheimer last year, the weekend was more a triumph of Wicked than it was of Glicked. We saw an opportunity to dominate a weekend and get a very large running start into the Thanksgiving holiday, said Jim Orr, distribution chief for Universal. We're very confident that it will play ridiculously well through the Christmas corridor and into the new year. But the counter-programming effect was still potent for Wicked and Gladiator 2, which likewise split broadly along gender lines. And it was again the female-leaning release, Wicked, like Barbie before it, that easily won the weekend. About 72% of ticket buyers for Wicked were female, while 61% of those seeing Gladiator 2 were male. Standing on their own, each of these movies may have done pretty much what they did, but it's hard to know, said Paul Durgar-Abadian, senior media analyst for ComScore. Raising awareness can indeed lead to an increase in box office. Let's put it this way. They didn't hurt each other at all. While Barbenheimer benefited enormously from meme spread word of mouth, both Wicked and Gladiator 2 leaned on all-out marketing blitzes. The Gladiator 2 campaign featured everything from a much-debated Airbnb cross-promotion with the actual Colosseum in Rome to simultaneously running a one-minute trailer on more than 4,000 TV networks, radio station, and digital platforms. The Wicked onslaught went even further, with pink and green-themed wickedly delicious Starbucks drinks, Stanley mugs, and Mattel dolls, some of which led to an awkward recall. Its stars made appearances at the Met Gala and the Olympics. The film screened at the CinemaCon 2024 in Las Vegas included scenes of Joseph Quinn as dressed in a white toga and laurel leaf crown, dramatically plunging his thumb downward to note the fate of defeated gladiators with Nylon. In the background in June of that year, Scott showcased an extended clip of the film featuring Denzel Washington, Paul, Pedro Pascal, Connie Nielsen, and Quinn. A poster for the film was released on July 8, 2024, with a trailer released the following day. The trailer would also reportedly be attached to the Marvel Cinematic Universe MCU film Deadpool and Wolverine 2024, which was released on July 26, 2012, for Jennifer Wett of RS. Technica said the trailer indicated the film's promises to be just as much of a visual feast as a new crop of power. Players, plus a couple of familiar faces, clash over the future of Rome rather than using an orchestral score. The first trailer used No Church in the Wild by Jay-Z and Kanye West, which caused a backlash among film fans, why some justified this choice of music by citing the trailer for the first Gladiator, which had used Baba by Kid Rock screen. Rant criticized how the second trailer spoiled the plot twist of Maximus being Lucius's father, while a common fan theory since the first film's release, Adam B. found it questionable to reveal in a trailer as it could have been emotionally impactful for audiences, like it was for Mescal when he found out his character's relationship with the original's protagonist on the first day of the 2024 NFL season. Paramount, Pictures and Pepsi announced a campaign cross-promoting the film with the soft drinks sponsorship of the National Football League. A series of advertisements featured football stars Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, Justin Jefferson, and Travis Kelce as gridiron gladiators, with Megan Thee Stallion appearing as Empress Megan on October 4th, 2024, Japanese professional wrestling. Promotion: New Japan Pro Wrestling announced that the movie would sponsor that year's King of Pro Wrestling event on October 14th, which is slated to be the first since 2019 on November 1st, 2024, at Luca Comics and Games 2024 to promote the film in Italian cinemas. Francesco Tti played a Roman Centurion 88 and 89 on November 11th, 2024. Scuderia Ferrari drivers Charles Lear and Carlos SS Jr. attended the film's premiere in London as part of a collaboration with Paramount to promote the film, with the film's actors Paul Mescal, Connie Nielsen, and Fred Heckinger joining the team at the 2024 Las Vegas Grand Prix reception in the United States and Canada. Gladiator 2 is projected to gross $42 to $47 million in its opening weekend per quorum, with Box Office Pro estimating between $60 to $80 million. It will compete with Universal's Wick in a release that has been compared to 2023's Barbenheimer to their contrasting target audiences. Critical response on the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes: 73%. Of 225 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6.8 SL10. The website's consensus reads echoing its predecessor while upping the blood sport, and Camp Gladiator 2 is an action extravaganza that derives much of its strength and honor from Denzel Washington's scene-stealing performance. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 64 out of 100 based on 48 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Rotten Tomatoes reported that critics praised the action performance's story and visuals, but some argued that plot-wise, it's actually too similar to its predecessor, 95. Early reactions from the film's first screening at Paramount Studios in Los Angeles on October 18, 2024, were positive. Critics praised Scott's direction, the set pieces, battle sequences, and Mescal's and Washington's performances, mentioning that Scott and Washington could be nominated for the Academy Awards, but a few felt the film lacked an emotional punch when compared to the original film. Film critic Scott Manzel deemed the film Scott's best since The Martian 2015, the big, bloody, and badass action spectacle that builds upon the original film's legacy. Historical accuracy. The film's historical accuracy was also examined. Some inaccuracies include the siege of Numidia by Roman tries and the presence of sharks in Anakia. At the same time, baboons and a rhinoceros showcased on the Colosseum's arena are historically attested. Scholar Ray Lawrence noted that the ancient admiration of those who defy death as gladiators is nicely set out by the film, and that the culture of gladiators is well presented. With a Doctor of Gladiators, Gladiators 2 movie review, "Are you not entertained?" bellowed Russell Crowe over the bodies of half a dozen or so armored combatants in the original Gladiator. It's a line etched in our collective memory. It also sums up Ridley Scott's belligerent and punchy directorial approach to this brewery. Businesslike sequel, nearly a quarter of a century has passed since the first film scooped 5 Oscars in 2001, including Best Picture and Best Actor for Crowe. But what's notable is how little has changed. Admittedly, there's a splatter of fresh blood. Gladiator 2 passes the tunic and battle sandals to Paul Mescal as enslaved but noble warrior Lucius. It sees Denzel Washington sink his teeth into a peach of a role as the slippery, ambitious master of gladiators Macrinus, and ramps up the spectacle. And it has to be said, the silliness with sharks in the Colosseum, an attack rhino, and a terrifying CGI hell creature that seems to be part shaved baboon, part demon. Yes, we are entertained. How could we not be? So derivative of its predecessor, it's practically a remake. This is evident from the outset. Gladiator and Gladiator 2 both open with a shot of a manly hand fondling grain in the first movie. It's the Malikian image of Crowe's Mew running through a field of golden wheat in the second. its Mescal pen lie toying with some chicken feed. The symbolism is clear. They might be fearsome soldiers, but these are solid, simple men anchored to the earth. The two share more than a fondness for cereal crops. Both suffer from a near-identical double whammy of inciting incidents early on. Both lose loved ones and find themselves enslaved by the Roman Empire, subsequently channeling their grief and rage into gladiatorial combat. They even share a trademark move, a scissor two-sword decapitation that serves as an emphatic final word in most disagreements. The same paradoxical truds grapple at the heart of both pictures, which argue that the gladiatorial games, days of slaughter for the entertainment of the masses, represent everything rotten at the core of ancient Rome. Cruel and fickle leaders, in this case the tittering quixotic double act of brother emperors Catala, Fred Heckinger, and Geta. Joseph Quinn used them as a distraction from the grim realities of life for the average Roman, and as a convenient way to dispose of enemies at the same time. The violence and savagery is rather the point of the Gladiator movies. The visceral combat sequences are phenomenal, superbly choreographed, formidably executed and edited with switchblade precision. Sure, Scott can dress it all up in a cloak of honor and dignity. But ultimately, the Gladiator movies tap into just the kind of primal bloodlust that whips the Colosseum audience into obeying frenzy. Undated films still hand out from Gladiator 2. Pictured Fred Heckinger as Emperor Carala, Pedro Pascal as General Acacius, and Joseph Quinn as Emperor. Get a CPA features Shiz film Gladiator warning. This picture must only be used to accompany PA feature Shiz film Gladiator. PA photo picture credit should read Aidan Monahan, copyright 2024, Paramount. Pictures, all rights reserved. Note to editors, this picture must only be used to accompany PA feature showbiz film Gladiator. It's for this reason that Gladiator 2 is quite binary and schematic in its approach to good versus evil in the latter camp. The Emperor brothers are enjoyably ghastly. Carala has a pet monkey, an advanced case of syphilis, and the high giddy laugh of a spiteful child. Geta is smarter more, calculating and vengeful, and wears so much fright mask makeup that he starts to resemble Betty Davis in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. On the side of honor and virtue, we have Lucius, essentially a cut-and-paste version of Crow's Maximus with added angst. Mescal acquits himself well in the action and brings a wincing, grimacing bass note of despair to his righteous rage. But he's an actor who works best when he is excavating the tiny, textured details of a character. And this is a role that requires a more broad-shouldered and muscular approach. Crow's bullish brawling line readings from the first film are much missed here. The only returning main character, Lucilla Connie Nielsen, has been stripped of much of her minky complexity and now champions rather blandly the egalitarian vision of Rome dreamed of by her father, the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Thank goodness. Then for Washington, delivering by far the most chewy and memorable performance as canny social climber Macrinus. The former slave is a slippery, ambivalent character who acts as mentor and supporter to Lucius, but who, this, as in all things, are entirely self-interested. If we are entertained, it's not because of the sharks or the apes chowing down on the supporting cast, but because of Washington gnawing chunks out of the scenery every time he's in shot. Full disclosure, I don't much like the first Gladiator. I think it's a big, dumb, overdone movie. It's fun enough in its way. And lines like, "Are you not entertained? And I will have my vengeance in this life or the next," are kind of cool beyond that Russell Crowe beating people to death in a soulful, mournful way, whatever that it won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Actor, is either ridiculous or perfect, depending on how you feel about awards. But there remain people who talk about it like a cinematic masterpiece. And who knows, maybe Scott wanted to relive some of the glory. Like the first film, this one begins with a massive battle. Lucius Paul Mescal lives with his wife Arishat Yulgonen in Numidia in North Africa. Both are skilled soldiers. And when the Roman navy attacks led by General Marcus Acacius, Pedro Pascal Asad is killed, and Elche is captured as the ships approach, it looks like someone asked ChatGPT to create a screensaver with dark clouds and ancient boats sound familiar. Then, how about this? Lucius is taken prisoner and becomes a gladiator. Stop me. If you've heard this before, there are still 2 hours left in the movie. Lucius is probably good at all. This because his father is Maximus, the general turned slave turned gladiator played by Russell Crowe in the first film. This is revealed in the film's trailer. Lucius captures the eye of Macrinus Denzel. Washington, all hail an ambitious former slave who is rising through the ranks of Roman society and in politics. Macrinus owns gladiators and sees Lucius as the meal ticket for his greater plans. Let's pause for just a second here. The first Gladiator made Crow a massive star who knows maybe the second one will do the same for Mescal. He is certainly aiming for stardom. He's the hero, and he's mesmerizing and magnetic, and he's bulked up, and he fights like a demon, and he's filled with rage and all that. And you think, sure, he could be a movie star, and then Washington saunters in and picks up a grape and flicks it into his mouth, or raises his eyebrow a touch, or lets the edges of his mouth creep into a smile, and you realize, no, this is a movie star. Every time Washington appears, you can't take your eyes off him. It doesn't hurt that he's having a ball as a dangerous villain, absolutely loving it. Rome has fallen into decline thanks in no small part to sibling Emperor Geta Joseph Quinn and Kerala Fred Heckinger. Both are hedonistic morons of the First Order. Kerala is further diminished by the syphilis that has reached his brain at one point. He names his pet monkey second in command. Marcus doesn't want to fight anymore. He wants to stay home with his wife Lucilla Connie Nielsen, returning from the first film. Yes, the man Lucius wants to kill is married to his mother. Intrigue, and there's more where that came from. Marcus is an interesting fellow back on the Gladiator front. Lucius and others have to fight in insane, shrieking apes of some sort who seem to have come down with a bad case of CGI. Lucius goes on to bigger, more spectacular bouts in the Colosseum, including one involving a rhino and one in which the floor is filled with water. So they do battle on boats complete with circling sharks. I could not get Sharknado out of my head. There are various plots to overthrow the emperors and either wrest control and put the empire in the hands of a single man or return Rome to its days as a republic. It's all melodramatic scheming and backbiting and betrayal, but it's also filler between the fights in the Colosseum. That's the real draw, right? And there's a good bit of it, but we've seen it all before. Maybe not quite as spectacular, maybe not quite as dumb. It's Washington, who ultimately makes Gladiator 2 stand apart from the first film, and makes it a lot more fun than it has any right to be. Other information about this film, it may not be high praise, but Gladiator 2, the equal to Ridley Scott's landmark slash and burn ancient Rome spectacular, is probably about as good a movie as we could have expected it to be. Written by David Scarpa, Napoleon, and directed by Scott, who at 86 hasn't lost his touch for the peacock pageantry of teeing masses thirsting for blood. The movie is a solid piece of neoclassical popcorn, a serviceable epic of brutal warfare Colosseum duels featuring lavish decapitations and beasts, both animal and human, along with the middle-brow decadence of palace intrigue. The whole film is tailored to the next generation. Specifications of its star Palm Howe, who plays a descendant of Russell Crowe's Maximus. I won't say more, and does it by not trying to imitate Crowe's performance in Gladiator. Crowe, wielding a sword that was like an extension of his inner hostility, was the ultimate thinking person's badass Mescal, spelt and placid. Comes on more like the disheveled son of Marlon Brando, a forlorn pussycat turned rager. 24 years ago, Gladiator was bracingly old and new at the same time, a hyperviolent literate action movie rooted in the theatrical antiquity of Hollywood's past and rendered with the then novel the effects of the future. With Gladiator 2, we go in knowing more or less what we're getting, but the film still stands strikingly apart from the blockbuster marketplace. It's a Saturday night epic of Tony escapism, but is it great a movie to love the way that some of us love Gladiator? No, it's ultimately a mere shadow of that movie, but it's just diverting enough to justify its existence at the beginning. We learn that Rome is being ruled by twin brother emperors, the Geta Joseph Quinn and the even more fey Kerala Fred Heckinger, who with their pale smirks are like hermaphrodites out of Fellini's Sation. The overstuffed Roman Empire is metastasized into sordid bloodshed and debauchery when an armada of Roman battleships led by the idealistic general Marcus Acacius Pedro Pascal shows up to conquer the North African province of Numidia. It's a rout. One of those killed is the soldier wife of farmer-turned-troop leader Lucius Virus Mescal, which sends him into a momentary tailspin of despair that stands in marked contrast to the primal wound experienced by Crowe's Maximus in Gladiator where the slaughter of his wife and son scalds him so harshly that he considers himself already dead. That's part of the poetic power of Gladiator. Maximus is now prepared to join them in heaven, which liberates his already considerable ferocity. He wants revenge so much, so that on a deep level he does not give a crow. In Gladiator gave one of my favorite performances in cinema. I've watched it a dozen times. That's because he played a variation on something we've all seen so often, the SE hard case wired to kill, yet invested it. With such uncanny soul, his squint spoke volumes, his physicality was existential. And when he lowered his voice to say to wean Phoenix's Comus, "The time for honoring yourself will soon be at an end." Translation, I would like to carve out your eyeballs with my thumbs. He was more invincible in his silent fury than any superhero. Paul Mescal doesn't have anything approaching that elemental masculine gravitas. His Lucius, who is captured and brought to Rome to be a gladiator, is sulky and pensive with a quizzical look. His stare is sensitive. His grin rule, his lower jaw juts, but Mescal has something that works for the movie. He projects not revenge, but a shaggy, rugged nobility, the idealism that will make Lucius the potential savior of Rome first, though he must survive in the gladiatorial arena, which he does by taking on a team of wild monkeys who seem like they're from another planet, which is strange and drawing the attention of Macrinus. Denzel Washington, a former slave who runs the Gladiator bullpen and becomes Lucius's mentor. Washington's performance is the film's wild card because you can't pin him down. He's a gregarious good guy, then a Machiavellian mover, catching gossip from senators, then a backstabber, then someone who will stab you anywhere and everywhere. You can feel Washington drawing on his Shakespearean knowledge to layer this character into a succulent real-world vision of ambitious evil. Lucius first thinks that his enemy is Pascal Zeus, who led the charge that killed Lucius's wife, but Acas is actually a decent chap who stands apart from where Rome is heading. He's plotting a coup against the emperors and has the senators like Derek Jacobs Grise on board if there's a relationship that carries Gladiator 2. It's the one between Luce and his mother, Lucilla Connie Nielsen, who sent him away from Rome as a boy after the death of Maximus the Boar. Two have a few issues to work out, and Neil's acting has acquired a tremulous bite. The way MCQS rises up, driven by Washington's formidable flair, lends the movie some structural surprise. What's less surprising, downright sequel, dutiful in fact, is Lucius's late-stage embrace of Maximus's moxie and his literal suit of armor. The way Mescal plays him with an anger that never quite simmers to a boil, we now can't help but see him as a millennial knockoff of Crow's glowering royal punk at Gladiator 2. Are we not entertained? We are, but that's not necessarily the same as Enthal devising a logical sequel to the Oscar-winning 2000 blockbuster Gladiator was not a self-evident task, given that the hero of the original Russell Crowe's Maximus Decimus Meridius does not survive the movie rather than go back in time. And imagine an origin story for Maximus director Ridley Scott and his longtime screenwriter David Scarpa. Napoleon, all the money in the world, have chosen to set the story a generation after the events of the first film. That choice, in and of itself, was not a bad one. The prequel as an excuse for franchise extension has become such a cliché. It's generated its own genre of online joke, calling a particularly maddening news story or social phenomenon one's villain origin story, but Gladiator 2, or as it's spelled in the opening title, Glider, sadly comes off as less a reinvention of the original than a curiously literal retread of its plot, beats, characters, and themes. Scott, still an active and relevant filmmaker at the age of 86, isn't returning to this material to cash in on whatever audience was out there. Waiting for the follow-up to a 24-year-old swords and sandals epic, having just looked at the early 19th century face of tyranny in Napoleon, Scott, ever the history buff, now seems interested in turning his attention to power and corruption in imperial-era Rome at heart. Gladiator 2 is more a drama of palace intrigue than it is an action movie, even if Scott serves up a Roman banquet-sized surfeit of sword. Clashing, shield smashing, and helmet bashing, Scott has always known how to direct a rousing, grand-scale action sequence, but the advance of CGI has made those elaborate spectacles both less plausible and harder not to snicker one's way through. Did we really need the full-on naval battle inside the Colosseum to be complete with circling sharks more? Detail? Sometimes a sequel is announced that makes everyone sit back and wonder why often. Because the first movie told the entire story, which leads to the question of, is there something new here? Or is it a simple cash grab? These are the thoughts that crossed my mind when Gladiator 2 was announced, as it seemed to be a case of, because nobody demanded it. Don't get me wrong, the trailer seemed fun, and I love the actors in it. But was this really needed? I don't think it was, but after watching it, I can definitely say it's something wanted and is extremely well made and an absolute blast. 16 years after Marcus Aurelius' death, we are introduced to Hanno Paul, Cow, who is immediately thrust into a fight against a Roman invasion of his home. Numidia, sadly, the Romans succeed, not only in conquering the city, but also killing his wife in the battle. Not only that he is captured and sold into slavery, his rage at getting revenge against the general who led the attack. Scott on Gladiator, as did costume designer Yates, whose work here is complemented by David Crossman's vast range of military and gladiatorial uniforms. No visual here is quite as lyrical as the motif of Maximus' hand brushing through the wheat field, or the visions of his wife and son in the original film, and some of Lucius' afterlife fantasies are on the clunky side, but there are evocative images that linger, like a shot of men raking the pebble sand on the arena floor the night before a contest. There's also a beautiful, painterly animated recap incorporating shots from the first movie that seems almost an extension of the Scott Free Productions logo, as he demonstrated in the far more uneven Napoleon Scott is in his element filming. Massive crowds and blood-soaked bee, the grandiosity accentuated by Harry Gregson Williams' high drama score. Gladiator 2 might not have a protagonist with the scorching glower of Crow's Maximus, but it has plenty of the eye. Popping spectacle and operatic violence, audiences will want this film. Directed by Ridley Scott, screenplay by David Scarpa, story by Peter Craig, David Scarpa, produced by Ridley Scott, Michael Pruss, Douglas Wick, Lucy Fisher, Walter of Parks, Laurie MacDonald, David Frenzen, starring Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, Fred Heckinger Bars, Derek Jacobi, Connie Nielsen, Denzel Washington. Cinematography, John Matt, edited by CLA Simpson, Semrau, music by Harry Gregson Williams. Production companies, Scott Free Productions, Lucy F. Douglas Wick. Productions distributed by Paramount Pictures. Release dates, October 30th, 2024. In Sydney, November 15th, 2024 in United Kingdom. November 22nd, 2024 in United States. Running time 148 minutes. Countries: United Kingdom, United States. Language: English. Budget $250 to $310. $210 million. Net box office $87 million. So guys, this is the review of Gladiator 2 movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.